Well, I care about the facts, and I prefer to take a look at the facts and objective realities as they are. Yep. And the objective realities is that the Asian American proves an American success story. This is a story that should be celebrated because a minority is able to achieve and minorities are able to achieve in this country. By the way, plenty of Black Americans also achieve in this country. In fact, the Black graduation rate for Black women is higher than for white people. People don't know that. The graduation rate failures are largely attributed to, unfortunately, Black men who were born into single parent families. And so these are issues and inconvenient facts that we need to talk about as well. If we're going to talk about critical race,
we're going to talk about another data set.
Talk about the American dream.
All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. We got to take a look at a video here of Kenny Xu, who is a board member of Students for Fair Admissions, which is a group that was responsible for bringing the case to the Supreme Court, where it was recently ruled that affirmative action will be removed from college admissions. We got to take a look at a video of Kenny Xu and a news anchor on CNN by the name of Abby Phillip having a discussion about affirmative action and what this means moving forward now. Obviously, Kenny Xu, who was instrumental in bringing this case forward in the first place, is excited and happy about this. But I imagine Abby Phillip, who is a Black woman, probably isn't too happy about this. And she was kind of trying to get him to, subtly trying to get him to see race as a significant component in college admissions, but Kenny Xu wasn't really trying to cede no ground on that issue. So we're about to get into this. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe while we're watching. Now let's roll it.
And I want to bring in now Kenny Xu, president of Color Us United, a group that advocates against affirmative action. He's also a member of the board for Students for Fair Admissions. That's the group that brought this case against Harvard and the University of North Carolina. Kenny, thank you for joining us. So today's ruling obviously is one that you were hoping for, arguing that the rules in place that support affirmative action were unfair to Asian Americans. So from a practical perspective, how does today's decision help Asian American students looking to get into elite colleges?
I just want to say I'm ecstatic about this decision. It means that Asian Americans can finally get treated on their merits. Guys, we know why Asian Americans should get into Harvard at disproportionate rates. It's because they study twice as many hours as the average American. It's not because of their race. It's because of their culture. It's because of their family values. Academic excellence, that should be prioritized. Those should be the values that schools like Harvard and Chapel Hill, supposedly elite schools and academic programs, should be valuing in an applicant, not race.
So you've argued also that Harvard and other colleges should get rid of their legacy admissions, which also gives people points for having a parent that went to that school. That's not happening here. I wonder why not challenge that, which is also presumptively an obstacle for Asian Americans being treated fairly in the admissions process.
Well, I hope you followed the case, but Students for Fair Admissions has challenged legacy admissions repeatedly over and over again. In fact, we argued that the way that Harvard could implement some of their diversity policies without discriminating against Asian Americans is to get rid of legacy admissions, which, as you know, disproportionately privilege white applicants. In fact, 33% of Harvard students who are white are legacy, and they have a 5 times more likely chance of getting in if you are legacy. So you really want to ensure diversity in admissions? Get rid of legacy admissions.
You heard today President Biden expressing some concerns over socioeconomic factors and inequality being made worse given this decision. He also presented what he called basically a way forward. I wonder if you take race out of the picture and you do what the president is suggesting, taking socioeconomic status into consideration, do you think that that would be fair to Asian American students as well?
No, I don't. I think that admissions should be only based on merit. And the reason why is because you can't, why are we asking a university to calculate somebody's level of adversity? I think that that sets a very bad precedent for anybody trying to get into college. We should be treated on the basis of our merits. We should be treated on the basis of how hard we work, our study, our SAT scores, our grades. A name-blind, race-blind process is what I would advocate for as president of Color Us United.
Kenny, can I ask you, though? I mean, colleges, obviously, they care about grades and SAT scores, but they also are filling universities of people, human beings, who have other factors that they bring to the table. Why is it not okay for them to consider those things?
I'm saying if you're going to consider those things, you should consider them without respect to race.
Sure.
So as you know, a lot of Asian Americans.
I think that that's exactly right. But socioeconomic status doesn't. If you take race out of it, let's call it socioeconomic status, where whether or not they grew up wealthy or poor. Is that not something that colleges might have an interest in considering?
The reason why you shouldn't consider that is because you should consider the success of an applicant. Because of affirmative action, Black Americans graduate from law school at the bottom 25% of their classes, largely speaking. And we don't want that. We want Black students to succeed. We want every student to succeed, low-income students to succeed. But you have to put them in scenarios, in places where they're likely to succeed. And lowering your standard to admit somebody of a socioeconomic status or race would not help them do that. In fact, it would harm their graduation rate and excellence.
Well, as the case also points out, the standard isn't necessarily lowered because students are all admitted. The question is whether race can be an added consideration, a tipping point in some of these cases.
The standard is lowered. The standard is lowered as the student merit admissions data shows. An Asian has to score 273 points higher on the SAT to have the same chance of admission as a Black person. So the standard is lowered for Black Americans.
Kenny Xu, thank you for your perspective. We really appreciate you joining us today.
All right, so you guys heard that. I think the tail end of this video sums it up pretty well. If you have a certain race or people from a certain socioeconomic status who have a lower standard to get into a college or institution than another race or socioeconomic status of people who have a higher standard, then the reality is that there isn't the same standard. There's a standard for one group and there's a standard for another group. But affirmative action being removed from college admissions levels the playing field so that everyone has to meet the same standard. And I know, I think Black people have a strong attachment to affirmative action because, it was introduced for us initially, and we've been told and conditioned to believe that that's a good thing. It's a good thing that that's there for us and that gives us opportunity. And I'd be lying if I said it didn't actually give us opportunity. I mean, it actually can get you in the door over people. Historically, it can get you in the door over people who are even more qualified than you to get into that door. But that's the reason why this case was brought up in the first place. Because this group, Students for Fair Admissions, they were fed up with it, so they brought it to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ruled that wasn't right. So the playing field has been leveled, and privilege is blind to those who have it. So the people who have benefited from affirmative action obviously feel like the rug has just been pulled from under their feet. But the silver lining and the good thing about this is that now, if you want to be admitted into college, you have to rise to a certain standard. You have to rise to the same standard that the Asian folks got to rise to. So the good thing is that now there won't be that stigma of, oh, this is an affirmative action. You only got here from affirmative action. That stigma will be gone. So if you Black and you make it into a prestigious college or, institution, then it'll be known that you got there on your own merits. And, I think we need to focus on things like, school choice, introduce school choice, which for some reason, a certain group of people in this country don't like and aren't for. But I think school choice is a great thing. I think there are too many kids with potential and kids who actually do want to learn, who are stuck in environments where the learning environment is terrible. The subject matters, and subjects being taught in the school, aren't up to a certain par that can actually meet the requirements that student actually needs. I think school choice is a great thing. Get those students out of those bad environments where they can't learn and where they can't excel and really shine, and where they can't actually be challenged. Get them into schools where they actually can be challenged. I went to a school where the standard of learning and the learning environment was not very great. And I remember, there being kids who were incredibly smart, or at least I thought they were incredibly smart, smashing all of the grades and passing with flying colors. But, when they move and go to another school and you talk to them a year later, they tell you how hard it is and how different it is inside a different school where, you have to learn at a different level. And it's like you got to play catch up. In my school, the AP classes were like normal learning in other schools. So I think school choice is important. And I think family values and an emphasis on education within the family structure is also important as well. And I mean, that's something that I don't think is discussed enough, something that we don't talk about enough. You know, we want affirmative action, but all affirmative action is doing essentially is putting people who aren't necessarily ready or equipped to be in a certain predicament, you're just putting them there. And that's why, like he said, a lot of the black applicants and affirmative action applicants, that's why they graduated in the lower percentile, because the threshold for them being admitted into the college in the first place was lower. So learning and retaining the materials were harder for them, and they had a harder time getting by in school. So absolutely, I think an emphasis on education from an earlier age is very important, because like I said, we love to talk about affirmative action, but we don't like to talk about the behind the scenes and how, you know, these children who are excelling, these Asian Americans who are doing great, smashing it on the test scores and smashing it in school, what exactly are their parents telling them and teaching them, and what family environment do they come from? What is it that is being instilled in them that is conducive to them getting these high test scores and excelling and doing so good in school, and then going to make a lot of money and to get good jobs and create generational wealth? You know, it's a element, a big element to that is how you are raised and the values, you know, your parents and your family and the family structure that you were raised in instills into you. That's huge. That's a very big part of it. Also, legacy admissions, which Abby Phillip brought up, which is, you know, a parent who's an alumni of a school paying, or, you know, telling a school, you know, I went here, so what do I got to do for my kids to go here? You know, and they get their kids in the school when their kids might not be qualified. That also negatively impacts the, you know, Asian Americans. That impacts these guys. But like Kenny Zhu said, his group has actually been advocating or speaking against legacy admissions as well. You know, so it's not as if they aren't acknowledging that, but, you know, one milestone at a time, I suppose. You know, legacy admissions isn't exactly a rule on the books either. That's kind of something that's a bit more backdoor. So I think, you know, that's probably harder to go at, you know, in terms of the Supreme Court and like rules on college admissions. You know what I'm saying? But that's all I got for you guys. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe on your way out the door. Let me know what you thought about this in the comments down below, and hit that notification bell. And until next time, you guys, I'm out of here. Peace.